When you choose a company that is right for you, aligned on values, you start from a place of intrinsic motivation, because you already want to do what the company is doing, and that just makes everything so much easier. As I started to realize how critical understanding consumer behavior is to success in product innovation, my interest in consumer understanding, marketing, and sustainable business actually grew. Inspiring consumers to drive responsible consumption. That's the really hardcore job of a marketeer.
Thank you so much for everyone for dialing in today. Our champion, John Ratcliffe, has helped to connect us with Christina Bauer-Plank. She's a global brand vice president at Hellmann, which is one of Unilever's biggest food groups. She has an absolutely incredible background. I was reading about it earlier, and Christina has a PhD in chemistry. She's got an MBA, and then she worked in R&D at Unilever and then moved over to marketing. So I'm sure that the conversation today will be incredibly insightful for all of us. For those of you who've been member of the club last year and years before, you'll know that John is one of our biggest champions and has had a long relationship with London Business School, in fact since 2009, where he's done lectures on Fireside chats. He's also the founder and CEO of Engage Video Group. Engage Video Group's content has reached billions of people, and he works for companies like Unilever, Nestle, Mondelez and Coca-Cola. More than that, John was also head of advertising at Google, and he worked in Google X marketing team under Sergey Brin. That's probably enough from me, and I'll hand over to John to run the session today.
Zoe, thanks so much for that incredible introduction. Yeah, really, really awesome. And thank you. And thanks everyone for making the time, and a particular big thank you to Christina. I'm so excited to have you here. Such a remarkable career journey and ending up leading marketing for Hellmann's. It's so interesting. I was thinking about Hellmann's, and I think certain brand categories can feel like commodities, but there's something about Hellmann's which is quite unique, and would love to dive into that a little bit. It really is a unique product in that category. And yeah, just super excited to talk about your career journey, Christina, and your views on marketing. We've got a lot of people at different stages in careers as well, get some career advice, and just understand your views on the future of the space which we play in. So super excited to have you here, and thank you so much for making the time. And maybe, Christina, if this feels like a good place to start for you, we could just start talking a little bit about your career journey, which brings us to where we are today, and perhaps some of the highlights along that journey.
Great honor for me to be here with you today. And I just said earlier to Zoe and John when we were chatting that, like you, I, was sitting in the university bench doing an MBA, and of course having some expectations of that, what that would do to my career. So I really relate to, to you and to, what indeed where you are. And I hope, some of my experiences and hearing about them are beneficial to you. And this is, again, why I'm very, very happy to be here with you today and share some of my insights, but also just a little bit of my journey. So my name is Christina Bauer-Plank. I'm Austrian. I grew up on a farm in Austria, so you could say growing food is part of my DNA. And I went to study chemistry at the University of Vienna, because I liked the field and I wanted to do something, really challenging. So I also completed a PhD in analytical chemistry. And at that time, I, really was on a sort of track that I wanted to pursue an academic career. And I was already working as an associate professor at the University of Vienna. And part of that academic career trajectory is to go abroad at a certain stage for an international postdoc research placement. And that's actually when I joined Unilever R&D in the Netherlands as a postdoc researcher more than 27 years ago. And I must say, now thinking back to this, this was a life-changing event. Not only because together with my husband, I packed up in Vienna and moved to the Netherlands, and actually we never moved back. And of course, back then we didn't realize that it would play out that way, because we thought, okay, we're gonna, go away for 1 year or 2 years and then carry on with our life in Austria. But it all, came very different. Because when I very shortly after landing in Unilever as this postdoc, I made a first major career pivot and decided actually not to go back to university, but to stay in the food industry because I was fascinated by the work that we were doing there, and of course all the possibilities, that the corporate world, brings you. And at that time, I was involved in a project to develop, a product, a cholesterol lowering spread. And that was, all part of Unilever's strategy back then to offer functional foods with real health benefits. So really sort of fascinating area. And as I started to realize that, like how critical understanding consumer behavior and their needs is to success in product innovation, my interest in consumer understanding, marketing, and sustainable business actually grew. It became really bigger and bigger. And I discovered, on the route, I discovered that my real passion was not really lying in R&D alone, but it was like in connecting science and business with consumers. That was what really sort of made me get up and get really excited. But, back then I realized that I felt that I first needed to study up on various aspects of business because, I was trained in chemistry and not in business. So that's when, of course, I embarked on an executive MBA at the Rotterdam School of Management. And actually halfway into that program, I made the actual step and moved from R&D into marketing, and then dedicating myself to building global brands and commercializing sustainability. And you can say this second career pivot, from R&D into marketing has ultimately led me to the role I'm in today. So in total, I have been working in Unilever for more than 27 years, 5 years R&D, 22 years marketing, and that is a very long time. So you also see I'm very old. But time flies when you're having fun. And, the way it always stayed fresh and interesting is that within Unilever, we have, like many other bigger organizations, we have a job rotation system in place, which means that, every couple of years, you move on to a new role where you, of course, do something else, you learn something new, you have new development opportunities. So I've worked across local marketing roles, regional marketing roles, global marketing roles. I've worked basically on all global foods brands, many regional and local brands. I've done more strategic roles, more operational ones. But, the one thing that kept coming back was Hellmann's. I'm working now on this brand for the third time, and it's my favorite. So yeah, that's where I am today.
What an incredible journey, Christina. And as I think about marketing in the context of Unilever and in the FMCG space, I think marketing is such a vital sort of component of the overall business, the ability to drive demand. I mean, it just feels like such an interesting space. And as I think about that and then sort of the ability to build brands and the power of brands, and I think as a marketing and strategy club at the London Business School, we've hosted, I think, 4 Unilever people over time. And I think the reason for that is just this incredible sort of focus on building great brands and doing marketing in the right way. So I guess as I listen to your story there, Christina, maybe you can talk a little bit about your actual role and the role of the marketing function within Hellmann's and what you look to achieve as a part of the organization.
Yeah, my role as global brand VP, basically what I'm doing is I'm leading the global brand strategy for Hellmann's, which, as you already said, it's one of Unilever's biggest global brands. And many of you will know Hellmann's, and maybe you hopefully use it every day, on your sandwiches and, dip your fries in it. But, not all of you might. So let me also just introduce, my brand to you, because I will speak about it, quite a bit over the next hour. So Hellmann's is the world's #1 brand of mayonnaise. It's very big and well known in North America, Latin America, the UK, and some other parts of Europe. And it's up and coming in countries like India, Pakistan, China. It's a 2.5 billion euro brand, sold in more than 60 countries, more than 1.5 million times every day. So that's, it's a really big brand, and it's a lot of mayonnaise. And so next to my role of leading the brand strategy of that brand, I also lead most aspects of marketing and brand development. Just think of things like brand communication, advertising campaigns, evolving, the holistic marketing mix, the superiority of that marketing mix, but also portfolio, product innovation. So you can, look at me as the sort of CMO for the brand Hellmann's. And next to that, I also lead Unilever's dressings category because, next to Hellmann's, that would include a series of other regional, global, and local brands of mayonnaise, ketchup, and mustards. Think of May, Dijon mustard, for example, Kissan ketchup, Lady's Choice, Calvé mayonnaise. These are some brands which you might or might not have heard of. And as my son always jokingly calls me, he always says, "Mom, you're a real sauce boss."
I love it. A sauce boss. It's so interesting, Christina. $2.5 billion business is just an enormous standalone business, even if it was living outside of Unilever, such a substantial business. And as I said earlier, one of the things which I think sets Unilever apart from a lot of other organizations is the importance placed on building brands and growing brands. And I think I'm right in saying that I saw, you'll obviously know this figure better than I will, but I think I saw that Hellmann's grew 6% over the last year. And so that it's like a healthy growing brand at the same time. I'd love to understand from your point of view, what you feel the importance of brands, building brands is in 2023. In some ways, brands have changed in their relationship to consumers. In some ways, they've stayed the same, but I'd love to hear your point of view on the importance of building brands.
Yeah. You have heard well that, Hellmann's has been doing well. Actually, even better than the number that you had in mind. Of course, I don't want to hide that I take pride in the fact that Hellmann's has been, for some time, Unilever's fastest growing big brand, growing at double-digit rates, for year after year after year. And of course, then, the role of brands, becomes really important for an organization. It is, of course, when you think about building brands and the role of marketeers, within a big company like Unilever, that is, of course, undergoing a lot of shifts because, many things are changing. And of course, John, you yourself are very much into, communication channels, new media, etc., and all of that. And all of that, is changing a lot, with the rise of online social media, streaming platforms, so in a way, there is one thing constant, and that is change. But of course, next to this change of channels and media, there are also big societal shifts, with very fast evolving needs and expectations of new generations of consumers. Like 10 years ago, we were looking a lot at millennials, and understanding them and understanding their needs. Okay, millennials have aged, and now we are looking at Gen Z, as the next cohort, coming in. But there are, of course, also other challenges, big challenges and changes, like, okay, think of climate change, think of other, environmental crises, that are, thrown at humanity. Think about the return of inflation. We are living in a cost of living crisis, that affects many, many people around the world. And let's not forget, the shocking realities of war in Ukraine and now also in Israel and other parts of the world. So, we are in really turbulent times, and, to refer to Ian Goldin, a professor at Oxford Martin School at the University of Oxford. He has written a very good book that I recommend to you. It's called The Age of Discovery, where he basically compares us to, like navigating the storms of the Second Renaissance. It's a fascinating read, and that's sometimes how it feels. So the job of a marketeer has become a lot more complex, but in my view, also a lot more interesting. And and of course the role of brands, and I will come to that in a bit, has also, of course, evolved with that. But let me first talk a little bit about marketing, because when you guys doing an MBA, you're part of a strategy and marketing club. I'm sure you are studying marketing, and just know that the fundamentals of marketing are still very much in place, and they're relevant, and they can never be forgotten and neglected. Whether that is, of course, Kotler, and I'm still studying Kotler, probably you do, with segmentation, targeting, the marketing mix, the 6 Ps of marketing. I work with that every day, that is, couldn't be more relevant. And of course, there is then, stuff like, Ehrenberg Bass, how brands grow through physical and mental availability. And of course, Peter Field, the long and the short of it, how you balance, short-term and long-term strategies, all very much relevant. But, today marketeers also need to navigate, this new media landscape, John, that you talk a lot about, and master the requirements of the online channels, when it's about, effective brand communication. And there is this whole field of sustainability, and I'm personally extremely passionate about this, and how it actually touches the marketing mix in many more ways than you first imagine. Because when you think about, packaging, recyclable packaging, circular packaging, regeneratively grown ingredients, if you work in food, net zero, social impact, that all touches, your product, that's really getting very, very close. And, and of course, as a marketeer, you are involved in many aspects, and you cannot be an expert in all these areas, and that's why what you see happening is that there is increasing specialization in marketing roles, because indeed nobody can be expert in all these areas, but over a span of a career, actually you start to touch, quite a lot of that, and you build up a broad overview. And when I switched to marketing more than 20 years ago from R&D, I did that mainly because I was fascinated by the breadth of the field, spanning from, the logic to the magic, the logic of, designing a product and a pack that works, the P&L and the whole financial piece around it, supply chain. But then, on the magic, creativity, consumer behavior, which is very, not logical and irrational, and this breadth has actually grown further, and and it keeps evolving, and there are new areas coming in all the time. For example, generative AI right now puzzling us. What is it? Logic, magic, both? What shall we do with it? What is the real use case? I think the jury is out there what it will do, but just to sort of close here on this one, that, as a marketeer, and to be honest, this is what I love about the function, and why I have actually, once I stuck with it, that it's, as a marketeer, you need to be curious, but you also have a real opportunity for lifelong learning, as, it keeps evolving. And yeah, I find that really, being the fun of it.
No, that's fascinating, Christina. I think as I think about what you were talking about there, with so much change, and just such a fast evolving world around you, I'd love to understand how within a large organization like Unilever, you manage to keep up with the change, with such a significant scale attached to the organization, how you manage to ensure that you are on the bleeding edge of what's happening, and that you don't sort of get stuck in what perhaps has worked in the past.
Yeah, look, let's maybe first go a step back and talk a little bit about brands, because you asked me before, what is the role of brands, and what's the importance of a brand at all, still in 1923, not 2023 soon, 24. And this is a moment where I actually like to talk a little bit about, Hellmann's and my brand, because I will use it to illustrate my point. And this is a brand that has a very long history already. This goes back to 1913 actually, where it was founded in New York City by Richard and Margaret Hellmann, two real people, immigrants from Europe who moved over there to seek their luck. and they sold basically sandwiches and salads in their little deli, in Columbus Avenue. And the mayonnaise they used, for the sandwiches and salads was so good that people started to ask, can we buy the mayonnaise, on its own to take home, because we also want to use it at home. And of course, then the Hellmanns, started to sell it in jars, and the rest is history. But again, when you think about what is it that they did, Richard and Margaret Hellmanns, they were serving a consumer need. It was a very, fundamental, simple need, but very important need, which is to make food tasty. Even simple food, even daily food, even the most humble ingredients like bread and potatoes. But again, why is that important? Because it is something that makes every day a little better, a little richer, full of joy, worth living, and that's what people want. And of course, today Hellmann's is a big global brand, and there is a lot of mayonnaise making a lot of sandwiches, creamy and tasty. And why is that, still important today for this brand, and also for many other brands? So even today we are still meeting that same need. We are helping people to enjoy great tasting food for the simple pleasure it is, without worry or without waste. That's how we talk about it. We call that the purpose of Hellmann's. And I think you all get it, you all get the taste part, okay, mayonnaise has to be tasty, that's why it exists. That's why we put it on our sandwich or our salad in the first place. But these needs are evolving. And of course, today, the needs are not the same as they were in 1913. Because today, next to a great tasting mayonnaise, people also want us to take care that our products are made from high quality, sustainable ingredients. They want us to offer products for all sorts of dietary requirements, whether it's healthy oils, reduced calories, vegan, you name it. And of course, they also expect us that our packs are not only convenient to use, but also made from recycled materials, and be circular, so that they don't have to worry about that bit. They expect us to worry about that. And of course, we also help people to be more resourceful with their food, so that they waste less, because when food tastes great, less gets wasted. And Hellmann's can do all of that. And that's, of course, why the importance of brands and the role of brands in this world, certainly didn't get smaller from my point of view, but bigger, because not only does a brand stand for a certain promise of quality and for meeting consumers' needs through a functional and emotional benefit or set of benefits, brands, and especially big brands, they have a big opportunity, and in my opinion, a responsibility to be real forces for good.
Yeah, that's incredible. And as I listen to you there, that all makes so much sense. And I guess that it's all of that story which you just told, which makes up a brand. And I guess sort of understanding those backstories is always so inspiring. I love hearing the genesis of any kind of company, but that's such a great one, and it makes so much sense to me. And it feels quite true to all of Unilever brands that there is like a genuine history, I guess, right back to I think the Lever Brothers soap, similar things, solving a real problem. So yeah, just so interesting to listen to there. So Christina, as I think about the incredible work that you have done as a brand, and maybe before I jump to that last question, I think 2023, 2022, 2021, it's been a tricky time to have strong growth as a company, as any kind of CPG company. I'm intrigued to understand, in your view, what you think Hellmann's has got right over this journey, and of course, continuing to invest in brand like we've just spoken about. But I wonder if there's anything else which springs to mind which makes you think that Hellmann's really has delivered well on over the last few years.
Yeah, very happy to talk about that. And maybe let me go also here a step back, because Hellmann's has been, of course, not only one of the big global brands, but it had also been a brand that has been quite in the spotlight over the last couple of years for having become a sort of lightning rod for the whole topic of brand purpose. And of course, there is a bit of a debate out there. whether, the P word, whether that's a good thing, not a good thing, whether it's, is something that is, driving or helping to drive brand growth, or whether that's all, just we, marketeers getting too woke. And it has been very interesting, to be in the middle of that. And in order to be able to speak about that, let me just start by saying that, there is, of course, at the starting point, there are also some issues out there, in this world. And, one of the issues that I care a lot about, and that actually Hellmann cares a lot about, is the issue of food waste. And I will explain you in a minute why, and, what's Hellmann's got to do with it. But let me first, say something about food waste itself, because, that is an issue that is often not so well known and well understood as things like, climate change, etc. But of course, the fact is that 1/3 of all food produced in this world is lost or wasted. 1/3, and that's while, 1 in 9 go to bed hungry. And food waste is responsible for 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's 4 times global aviation. So again, it's a huge thing. If food waste for a country, it would be the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gas after the US and China. So look, it's clear that here is an issue that needs action. And it's not only the climate, it's also food security, because, we are living in a time, and you referred to it, how the last years were disrupted and turbulent. There is also food security at stake, because, with these big disruptions in the global food supply chain, first there was a pandemic, then, the effects of climate change start to take hold. Now we have a war going on in some of the, biggest agricultural, producing nations. Food grown on agricultural land as large as the whole of China cannot just go to waste, because the costs to people and planet are just too high. And, and to bring it even a little bit closer to home, 60% of food waste happens in the home, in our kitchens. So not somewhere in the industry or in restaurants or somewhere far away. No, in all our kitchens. And that at the time where we talk about food inflation and, cost of living crisis, again, a fact is that, for example, UK, but in the US, it's not different, that 1 in 5 shopping bags of food shopping actually ends up in the bin, 1 in 5. So how is this possible? And of course, some of you may shake their heads and say, wow, I didn't know that. And I tell you, many years ago, I didn't know any of that, because food waste is a very unseen and undervalued problem. And it's poorly understood also, why is it happening? Because nobody sets out to throw good food away. I think we all agree that wasting food is wrong, and it's shocking and it's wrong, yet it happens all the time. So you already see that it's a topic where I'm very passionate about, and it could go on and on, but now, I will come to Hellmann's. Hellmann's, and I'm not, again, going back where the brand comes from, because, for purpose, this is really important, that, there is a real authentic, link between what you stand for as a brand and, what is it that you're doing. Hellmann's has always been about turning even the simplest ingredients into tasty meals. Again, think of sandwiches and salads. This is not like high culinary, haute cuisine. It's something very basic and daily. And some of the most iconic Hellmann's recipes actually are involving leftovers. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving in the US. Many turkeys will be roasted and cooked, because that's what you do on Thanksgiving. And the day after Thanksgiving, there is just all this leftover turkey, what's happening with that? And of course, one of the most, his iconic recipes of Hellmann's is, a turkey sandwich that is made with leftover turkey. UK, same thing, Boxing Day, and so there is a real legitimate role Hellmann's always has played, in just giving leftovers a second life, reviving them, making them delicious. And actually, luckily, there are now many people say, actually, I enjoy my turkey more on the day after, Thanksgiving than on Thanksgiving. So, this is really important. where where a brand of the scale of Hellmann's that reaches into, every other household in big markets like the US or the UK, we have a real opportunity to do something there. Because we are already there to begin with, we have credibility, and so we can, and of course, as marketeers, we know how we raise awareness and how we can change behavior, because that's what marketeers are good at. That's what we do. And of course, what we can do is we can inspire, but also enable people to, be more resourceful with their food, give them ideas, what to do with their leftovers, also make them aware that actually, they can make their food go a lot further than it does right now. And the way we talk about this, of course, make taste, not waste. That's our mantra and our battle cry. And ultimately, this, thing of brand purpose is what makes a brand, relevant to consumers, because, the research couldn't be clear about this. People expect brands to take action on some of those big issues out there in the world. And, and there where the role of the brand in people's lives comes together with positive impact that you can have in the bigger world, of course, that's where brand purpose sits. And brand purpose sits where it's defined well. But what is also really important, and that has been maybe misunderstood in the last years a little bit, and that also led to that debate, whether it's a good thing, not a good thing, that of course it's not only about brand purpose. It's not the only ingredient. There are other things that we have to get right too in order to make a brand grow and to make a brand become stronger, like a great quality product. Again, for a brand like Hellmann's, that's really the beginning. A great quality product, the right value proposition, innovation, shelf availability, all these things needs to be in place and be done well. And if you do all of this well, then of course like brand purpose and being purposeful and doing good can be an accelerant of brand growth. And I believe the sort of results that we have seen with Hellmann's over the past years serve as a great proof point to that story. And I'm always happy to engage in conversations with those who are still skeptical and still need to see more proof. Because I'm really there, and I feel also with the work that we have been able to do on Hellmann's, and we are doing on Hellmann's, by the way, that we are hitting a sweet spot between doing something really good that's also meaningful to people, while at the same time like helping our business to grow.
What a comprehensive answer there, Christina, and so interesting, because I've seen it's not just a pressure, it's not a small pressure. I know this pressure sort of like mounts right up to sort of like an investor level, CEO level of the organization, and I know that there is a lot of pressure which comes with this argument. And as I listen to you there, it makes so much sense to me, and certainly from my point of view as a consumer, I definitely feel that I would rather support the brands who are caring about these things, rather support the brands who are investing their time and energy and trying to make them better. And as you say, 1/3 of all waste, it just blows my mind. Third biggest country, just food waste. It really is mind blowing. And as I think about leftovers, it's so interesting because leftovers in some ways can think of sort of like they don't have like a lot of respect to play to leftovers. But as you talk about that leftover turkey, it's such a it sounds really appetizing, and it really is such a sort of respectable place to be playing, and such exciting stuff. So yeah, just so inspiring to hear you talk about that, and thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, especially and if I may, just again, I also want to influence you a little bit. Just think about your fridge is your friend, and it always can give you extra. Your fridge can always give you extra. And there is a thing that we call even fridge blindness. You open your fridge and you look in and you think, I've got nothing to eat. Well, actually, think again and look, because there is always something there, and with just a little imagination and maybe a bit of Hellmann's, okay, you can take turn this nothing into something very delicious.
I absolutely love that. Fridge blindness, I think, are definitely very, very true. Yeah, what a great explanation. And that's just so energizing to hear. And it does make a lot of sense that this kind of purpose can drive growth. So thanks so much for explaining that, Christina. it's so interesting as I listen to you. So many of the things we've spoken about are so true to marketing and have been true for such a long time, that sort of like strong purpose behind brands will drive performance. Brand building drives performance. I wonder, as you think about the question I asked earlier about sort of the change at the same time, and of course, as you said, so much stays the same and then so much change happens at the same time. Fascinated to understand your point of view on how you keep up with the change while ensuring that the sort of core principles are in place.
Yeah, look, I think I already partly answered that question, because, indeed, all, I would say all the fundamentals of marketing, are very, very much valid. But of course, new areas are being added all the time, from the new digital landscape, sustainability, and support, and as a marketeer, you really, need to stay curious and want to keep learning, what's coming and what's next. And personally, I find that so interesting. And when you think about the future of the function and the future of the industry, when you think out just a little bit more, then of course it starts by thinking about what business are you in and what are you trying to achieve in the first place. But if we are in the business of making sustainable living commonplace, and that's at least how Unilever defines its purpose, this is what we do and always have done, by the way, also 100 years ago when the company started, or even before it started. Marketing has a very big role to play to drive many of those changes that are needed in this world. And again, I'm fascinated by this, and I find my job really meaningful because of that. Just think of things like, how can we scale sustainable practices? Many of these practices are already identified, but how to scale them, that is still a huge question mark. But again, one way, or actually, in my opinion, one of the most effective ways to scale is to commercialize sustainability, to make it desirable and preferred, that people actually want it, and not that you need to push it down, anyone's throat. And that's marketing. That's the really hardcore job of a marketeer. Or indeed inspiring consumers to drive responsible consumption. Again, that is what marketing does. Or just think of how marketing and advertising has always played a role in shaping societal norms. So there is now a very big job to do to change, many of the unhelpful norms and stereotypes, that are in the way of people actually being happier about themselves, or our communities being more inclusive. So, yes, change everywhere. You need curiosity and a love for learning to keep up with that. But again, when I think about the future, of the function of the industry, I'm very excited about it, because I think there is a lot to do and a lot to contribute, especially when we actively work to stay, to be part of the solution.
That makes so much sense. You spoke a little bit about the passion and how energized you get around this kind of work and how sort of meaningful it is to you. And I guess one of the challenging things in today's world is finding and keeping great people in your teams. And I suppose, within the marketing function, there's this incredible content requirement, but then outside of that, there's finding and keeping brilliant people to execute against that. And as I think about purpose and the power of purpose to achieve that, it feels incredibly useful as a way to achieve that. And maybe that's an interesting segue into sort of more of the cornerstones which make Unilever what it is as an organization. And I think Unilever has always been very good at finding and keeping brilliant people. I'd love to hear your point of view on how you do that personally. And of course, there's the Unilever piece, and then within your own team, how you do find and keep the best people.
Yeah, look, people is really where it all starts and stops with. It's with the right people, the rest follows. And when I built my team, and of course, I've been in the business for some time. I've built many teams, and I've recruited many people. And what I've also, learned by doing is that, of course, I look at somebody's background, what their skills and experience are. But I look even more at their personality, because in the end, attitude trumps experience every time. And the other thing that is something that I have really learned to pay attention to is, how a potential candidate really enriches the diversity of the team. Like adds something new to the team, makes the team more diverse on the one hand, but of course fitting in and building, to the culture of the team. So, yes, experience, skills, what you have learned, is important, but indeed personality, attitude, and of course some of the values that you're looking for, and then, the diversity of the team and team fit. And maybe a word on, again, what values, again, I look for in a marketeer, when I'm recruiting. I already spoke about curiosity and love for learning. That is really, for me, a must. Because the field of marketing is ever evolving, and you need to be curious about what's going on, what's going on out there, in people's lives, in the world. And without that curiosity, I think you cannot be a good marketeer, because that's really the fundament. And the other thing, and that's, I'm just saying like it is, and maybe somebody disagrees, and that's fine. What is really important is you need to be willing to serve. Serving people's needs. It's not about you, it's about them. And it's about the world. And it's not about the great ideas that you might have. It's about the problem you're going to solve. So only if you have that, the way you think and what you do, is totally consumer and customer centric, you will be a successful marketeer. It's, if you remember one thing, that's that, it's about them and it's about the world, and it's not about you. And of course, there is this thing called leadership, which of course is always important and very multifaceted, and 100 ways to define it. But of course, when you work in a big global company like Unilever, it's a lot about international multifunctional teams. Teams also that you often don't have direct authority over. For example, like I work with a global team that, I have not really authority over because they don't report to me, but still, I need to find ways to lead them in a way that they autonomously, can do their thing. And of course, finding ways to tap into their skills and passions every day, and develop them so that they can grow to the full potential. So leadership is very important. And of course, leadership is also something that's growing over a career. But, certainly, yeah, at the point of selection, something that I'm always looking at.
Such great answers, Christina. I wrote down 4 things there. I couldn't help myself. With the right people, the rest follows. Attitude trumps experience. You must be willing to serve, and it's not about you, it's about them. And I just think those are such powerful leadership cornerstones. And I know, all of these things, I think they come to you over time. And the more experience you have, we've been building our business for 7 years, and I know that all of those things just feel so true to me today, and so much more true every day that we embark on this journey. Christina, you spoke about diversity there, and I just wanted to drill down a little bit, and maybe, I don't know if anything springs to mind as a good example of where diversity has been particularly useful in your team, in your journey, whether it's a point of view on a complex problem, whether it's insight into a different audience. I wonder if anything springs to mind under that heading, which sort of articulates that sort of
diversity is a very big topic and has many aspects. That's like we can have a whole session on that topic separately. But maybe let me just tap into one aspect of diversity, which is cultural diversity. Which is of course something, which for me in my professional life, but also in my private life is, something I deal with every day, and actually something I love. I have a global job, looking after a global brand that operates in 60, countries in all parts of the world. So it's my day job to lean into the different cultures, and look for commonalities, but also understand the differences between, say, a mom in the US and one in India, a young person in Brazil and another one in the Netherlands. And that's fascinating, because when you look very deep deep enough, then you find more commonalities than you think. But when I build, for example, my team, my global team who works directly with me, I try to make sure that this cultural diversity of the brand and of our consumers out there also get reflected in the people who work on the brand team. Because, it really makes the job so much easier, because everyone brings an intuitive understanding of their own culture, but also typically blind spots, things, about our own culture that we don't see or like not consciously see. And then it's really useful and just good when you have a multicultural team, diverse, culturally diverse, because in my experience, they will always do a better job in understanding and serving the needs from people around the world so much better than, a less diverse team. And by the way, it's also just so much more fun to work with people from different cultures. I always say, you really get the best of all worlds. When it comes to simple things like how to celebrate a birthday, or now with the end of year festivities, you hear all of that, or even simple things like, how to make the best potato salad. A vast discussion in my team, because I tell you, in El Salvador, the perfect potato salad is so different than in Austria. And, we are spending hours debating about that.
Oh, that's absolutely fascinating. I've got a question here from Andre, and he talks about how, the role of brands feels as relevant as ever, but in this sort of hyper competitive attention landscape where it's so hard just to get people in their day life and just keep their attention for a second to land your marketing message, just how much harder this gets every day, as more and more media types and more different things compete for attention. How are brands managing to do that? And is there a way to sort of break through better, I suppose?
Yeah, that is a reality, a total reality that we are, facing every day. How to get attention, how, to connect with people. And of course, the ways these days are very different than, 10 years ago. And John, you already spoke about it yourself, of course, media channels, have evolved, but even, like how you speak, and what you say, probably has evolved to a certain extent, with, of course, the dominance of short form, in very short attention spans, but there is, of course, still a place for long form. But, this is where, again, as a brand that has been around for a long time and that is already, very well known, has, I would argue, an advantage. Because indeed, it's no longer, with the exception of new markets, that I need to establish, a new brand name, or people need to remember a new brand name. But it's as important and even more important, to refresh and keep alive certain what we call memory structures, and we're doing this through, trying to be very distinctive, like creating these sort of mental shortcuts that people, go very quickly from, okay, I need a product, for the day after Thanksgiving, to like freshen up my leftovers, to very quickly, of course, coming to a mayonnaise, very quickly coming to Hellmann's without a whole, long thinking journey. And that's, of course, where I think what we call distinctive brand assets come into play, which are the logo, the name, simple visual cues we need to refresh all the time, so that people just don't not forget it and don't need to think, because indeed, life is, complex enough, and all our attention is cluttered with a million things, and the last thing you want to do is think hard about your mayonnaise.
That makes so much sense. And I guess the fact that it tastes really good helps too in that moment of decision. One of the things which I found so interesting on my journey, and something I didn't perhaps see as much value in early in my journey, is the power of values, both personally, the importance of how you show up in the world and the values which the people around you can know to expect from you, and then also within organizations, the power of values, and then within brands, the power of values. And I think the longer I sort of look to lead a business, and I'm a dad in my family, the more I think that sort of like clarity of values is just one of the great superpowers in life. And I'd love to hear your sort of point of view, living in such a a incredibly value-driven organization, and also I get a strong sense from you that values are very important to you. I'd love to hear your point of view.
This is also something that, you know, has really grown on me. You know, again, when I was a young person, that's a long time ago, I did not think about that so much. What are my values? And, you know, how can I find an organization that match my values? But matter of fact, from where I sit today, I know that, you know, more and more young people want to work for a company that is aligned on values. You know, here certainly that's one of those societal shifts or demographic shifts that have occurred. And of course, you know, Unilever has been, you know, a company, or is a company that is attracting a lot of great people because of its values and because of its purpose. And, you know, and the good thing is when you choose a company that is right for you, you know, aligned on values, you know, you start from a place of intrinsic motivation, because you already want to do what, you know, the company is doing, and that just makes everything so much easier. And of course, as a leader, you always have a duty to inspire your team and to motivate your team. But again, if your team already buys into, you know, what the company stands for, or your brand stands for, what you try to achieve, your mission, your purpose, you know, that's just extremely helpful. And, you know, there is, I'm sure you know that saying, and it really, I don't even know where it came from. I heard it from one of my bosses in the past. And he said, you know, when your job is what you love to do, you don't have to work a day. And there is so much truth in that. And, you know, to be honest, I feel blessed that you know, yeah, I feel that there are not many days that I have to work because I really love what I'm doing.
Ah, such a great answer. I just love that. Start from a place of intrinsic motivation. And it does make so much sense, because if everyone's working because they believe in the purpose, it's just, I don't think you can get anything deeper than that kind of motivation. It's incredibly powerful. I'm a South African, and I just watched the Rugby World Cup. I don't know if it's come across your radar at all, but it finished a couple of weeks ago. And I think everyone in that team has such strong intrinsic motivation with the purpose of sort of, you know, fighting for their country, that I think it's hard always when there's a strong intrinsic purpose to sort of fight against. So yeah, I just absolutely love what you said there, and it feels so powerful. There are two questions. Let's see if we can get to both. The first one, which feels closely related to what we've just been talking about, is the power of culture within a company. And I think it's a lot to do with values. We've kind of spoken to a bit of this now, but I wonder if there's anything to add here. And just a question around, you know, the power of getting culture right. I think there's that age-old Peter Drucker quote which says, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And I know when I first read that as a business founder, I was like, oh gosh, I don't even know what culture means really. I worked at Google for a long time, and the culture there is, you know, it's quite hard to understand, because it's, you know, it's very easy to perceive the bean bags and the foosball tables and the free massages and free food as the culture. But actually, I think there's so much more to culture. And I think it's taken me a long time to really appreciate the differences and what is culture and what we stand for as an organization. I'd love to understand your point of view on the culture within Unilever, which does drive success. I think it's so much of what we've spoken about, but I wonder if anything else comes to mind there.
Yeah, look, I agree with that statement, you know, that culture eats strategy for breakfast, or, you know, was it that? Why? Because look, strategy, of course, is very important, because, you know, it's about the direction, but strategy, of course, also changes, it's evolving, and of course, culture is also not static, but culture is something much more deeply embedded in an organization, because it's basically coming out of the people, and we're back to people, you know. And of course, culture is also something that you in a way foster and grow by, you know, choosing people. You know, it's like nearly like a living organism, you know. And, you know, there is, of course, a Unilever culture, and, you know, and that culture, probably next to the mission and the purpose, is what made me, or which makes me, you know, after 27 years still like love the company, because I love the culture, I love the people, and some of the people are my best friends today, you know, because there is, of course, something around, you know, it's not about being all the same, but it is about, you know, having commonalities in what you stand for, and certain values that you share. For example, a spirit of pioneering, a level of decency, again, just to name sort of two that are very important for Unilever people. When you are in an organization, that from a culture point of view, really sort of works well with you, changes in the organization, which again happen all the time, like in any organization, but certainly in a big corporation, the structure, the organization, that is something that really changes quite a bit. Strategy, of course, also changes as portfolio evolve, etc., etc. And that is normal. And, I think, you better embrace that, because that's part of corporate life, or part of life in general. But of course, culture is much more, ongoing. And I'm not saying it's static. It, of course, also evolves with its time, and it must. For example, today agility is much more important than it used to be 20 years ago when I started, or 27 years ago. So that is certainly how culture evolves with times, because it must, but it is, it is offering, a basis, for the organization and for the strategy to build from.
I love that, Christina. Such a great answer. Last one here, and this is quite kind of an interesting one. So it's just so interesting to see how much change there has been in this world of media. And, so interesting to see that at a time where it's harder and harder to get through and reach people through traditional mediums like TV, if you add up the platforms like TikTok and Instagram videos and Facebook videos and YouTube, it's interesting that today online video is in fact the largest communications channel of all in terms of its ability to reach people. I'm intrigued to understand, I know Hellmann's has done so well in the space over time, and I'm just intrigued to understand your point of view on that space. What inspires you about the space, if anything comes to mind?
Yeah, look, first of all, it's a fact and a reality that, people indeed have moved their media consumption dramatically, and we need to sort of move with that, and we do. Just to give an example, for us, it's not an exception now that we have 60-70% of our total media spent in the online space, and that's huge. That's huge. Of course, that also makes it complex, because, in the old days, when it was mainly TV and maybe outdoor and one other thing, to control effectiveness of communication was much easier, because, okay, we had our testing methods, and we still do. And, we worked out, our previous scores, and, we had our ROI indicators. And now this is all much more complicated, because indeed the channel is not only fragmenting and changing all the time, but also effectiveness measurement is not quite as straightforward. So that's why, we need to work, harder and be more clever. And that's, of course, where then also new technology comes into play. Who knows, AI maybe sort of bails us out here. But, whether we like it or not, that's again where I'm coming back to what I said before. It's not about us, it's about them. If they choose to spend their time on online video and streaming and TikTok and whatever, because next year it will be something else. Okay, we need to sort of be in tune to that and go with it.
That makes so much sense. Thank you so much for your time. I just can't help but saying that you are such a great advocate, first of all, for Unilever, such a great advocate for purpose and the power of purpose, a great advocate for values, and also for marketing careers. And I've just thoroughly enjoyed chatting to you, and I've just found this so interesting and energizing. So thank you massively for your time and energy and all your wisdom you've shared today.
Yeah, thank you, John, and thanks everybody for your attention. All the best, with your studies. I'm sure you have, brilliant careers ahead of yourselves. And as I've said to Zoe before, maybe there is an opportunity one meet in person. I'm in London, regularly, so maybe I pop by one day.
Fantastic, Christina. Thank you so much, and have a brilliant day.